diary. Today, I'm going to shoot a video with pretty basic composition, not really thinking much about it. I could do so much better, but I have the advantage of having this beautiful Hudson River behind me and these beautiful trees. And so I'm just going to keep it simple today because I have some stuff on my mind that's really kind of bugging me. And I want this to be today's diary entry. What I'm thinking about is the ridiculous arguments that we have with one another about pretty much everything. I think it's a cultural thing that we just want to argue. You know, we just want to fight. Everybody wants to be right. Everybody wants to be better. Everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to be the boss. And I think it's leading us to total destruction. For example, you know, I happen to think now with all the experience that I've had and all the work that I've done with full frame, micro four thirds, and APS-C cameras, that there is absolutely no difference between any of those formats when it comes to getting a beautiful final product. Like if you want to make a movie for HBO or Showtime or Amazon or a big movie theater or whatever, if you're making a commercial for Nike, it doesn't matter if you have micro four thirds, APS-C, or full frame. If you know what you're doing, you can get the same thing. And yet, we have these constant, incessant arguments about, you know, micro four thirds is dead and all this kind of stuff. And if it is dead, it's only dead because people don't want to buy it anymore because they're buying into this whole, I must have full frame. And this is coming from somebody who's using a full frame camera. I'm using a Panasonic S1ii, the Lumix. Is it Panasonic? Is it Lumix? We could fight over that too. But, you know, I'm using a Panasonic S1ii. And is that any better than the GH5 that I also have? It's not. I really struggle with which one I mean, actually, I don't struggle with which one I should use because all my good lenses are for the S1ii. I bought the GH5 way after I had the S1ii just to have a backup camera. And then when I started using it with these cheap little lenses that I bought, I was like, wow. I seriously underestimated micro four thirds. This GH5 is like a movie-making machine. I have no idea what people are talking about. So, dear diary, I think one thing that would solve the problem maybe is that everyone who shoots full frame should shoot micro four thirds or should shoot APS-C for a while. Or anybody who has only shot APS-C or micro four thirds, they should have the opportunity to shoot full frame. You know what I mean? Like interchange your system. And I think if everybody had the opportunity to do that, I don't know what the YouTube camera filmmaking space would do at that point because there would be nothing to fight about anymore because, you know, like there would be nothing to argue about. There would be no argument because people would realize that as long as you learn your settings and how to shoot and how to compose and how to expose and all of that, you know, you would have nothing to complain about, no matter which system you bought into and committed to. I guess the real question is, why do they have all these systems? Like, who knows, you know? I guess maybe it would be interesting to figure out the history of these systems. I keep leaning on my keys here on my wrist. It's hurting me. It would be interesting to figure out the history of these. Like, why did they make, which came first, you know? Was it full frame? Was it micro four thirds? Was it APS-C? I think it was APS-C first for filmmaking because that's close to a Super 35, but I don't know. But that would be interesting to me, which came first, and then why create more? I think it's just all marketing. Like, let's do full frame because it gets more low light, or, you know, it's easier to get this depth of field, this small, tiny little depth of field that everybody's obsessed with. But, you know, if you watch, I don't know, one of the greatest films ever made, like Citizen Kane, you'll see that there's not even 1 second of blurry background in that film, that there's something happening everywhere in the frame throughout that whole film because it helps drive the story forward. Like, that's what the most important thing is the story. And I don't know, all of this makes me think about, like, I wish everybody who only watched Fox News would agree to watch Rachel Maddow for 6 months or 6 weeks, whatever, would agree to listen to Brian Lehrer on WNYC, PBS, NPR. I wish everybody who only watched CNN and MSNBC and NPR would agree to watch Fox News for months. I wish everybody would, like, put themselves in everybody else's chair and really understand what is happening, and then compare that to their real life around them, like what's really going on around them, because I think cameras, just like the news, it's the same thing. Like, we're being fed information that is manipulative, that is trying to get you to buy into something, that is trying to win you over, but it's not based in reality a lot of the time. Or at least, if it is based in reality, you can no longer tell. And the only thing we have to base reality on is our own reality, our own life, our own community, our own family, our own city, our own state, all of it. You know, like, we have given up on observing things by ourselves, you know, like observing the world around us ourselves without being told, without being, you know, being addicted to a certain news station or camera brand or, you know, camera format or something like that. Like, we have been programmed. And if you continue to do that and you continue to buy into it, and especially in this world with a 24-hour news cycle or a 24-hour YouTube feed or social media feed where you're watching nothing but videos on Micro Four Thirds because that's your favorite, because that's what you have, or you only have full frame, that's all you're interested in, full frame lenses, because they're better than Micro Four Thirds or APS-C lenses, but they're not. That's not reality. Like, you need to try the other side. You need to observe the other side. You don't have to live it, but you have to at least see it for yourself. You can't just go by what you're being told. You can't do that. You can't just listen to Fox News. You can't just listen to Anderson Cooper on CNN, Jake Tapper. You can't do it. You can't only listen to Rachel Maddow, because then you're not going to understand how somebody who listens to, I don't even know the people's names on Fox News, but you're not going to understand why they might believe what they're being told. Same thing with Fox News. You're not going to understand, like, you know, my brother, who's a MAGA person, I haven't spoken to him in years. The last conversation we had, he actually said to me, "You're drinking the Kool-Aid." Except that he had no idea what he was even talking about. Like, he was saying things about my life specifically that were just wrong. And I wasn't even arguing with him, because I realized he's watching something that's telling him something else every single day. And he even said to me, you know, we were going back and forth, and he said to me, "Look, whatever you say to me, I could say the exact opposite, and I could make it valid." And I'm like, well, yeah, you could say anything, but that doesn't make it true. He said, "It makes it true to me. And there are enough people, like, I'm not the only one." And so that's why I'm saying, if you're only shooting Micro Four Thirds and you think that's good enough, you know, you should try full frame. You should try APS-C and see if that makes it better for you. Now, I know that's a privileged thing to say. I can't do that. I can't afford to do that, but I'm lucky in that I have worked with all three. Like, the first camera I owned was an APS-C camera, Sony A6400. The second camera I had was a Panasonic S1ii, full frame. Was it better? You know, when I look back on my A64 videos now, it's beautiful. They look beautiful. They're amazing, because the storytelling was really compelling. And even though I was just learning how to use a camera at that time, I mean, look, I shot a feature film on my phone, for God's sake. I just saw it on a big screen at the Manhattan Film Festival, you know, and it looked beautiful. As a matter of fact, they were playing Sinners, Ryan Coogler's film, right after my film in the same theater. And so it looked beautiful. It sounded beautiful. It was a phone. I've worked with APS-C. Then I got full frame. I love my camera, but I love it because it just allows me to do what I want to do. And you know what? Something tangible. I did want better stabilization, because I run around with the camera in my hands all the time. So for that, yes, the S5 has better stabilization, you know, because Panasonic has great stabilization, and the A6400 has zero stabilization. It doesn't have stabilization, but that doesn't mean it's a worse camera, because, you know, most proper cinema cameras don't have any stabilization. They don't have any autofocus. So that's a ridiculous comparison, you know? And now I've used Micro Four Thirds because I have the GH5. Now, I'm going to admit, I have never once in my life ever watched Fox News. I've never seen it. But I have seen clips. I have seen clips. And when I see these clips on YouTube usually, because I don't use social media anymore, I'm not on Facebook or Instagram anymore, I've never had a TikTok account or any of that, Snapchat, whatever. But when I do see these clips, I am astounded at what I just heard, because it's the exact opposite of what I'm hearing on MSNBC, from Rachel Maddow, from Brian Lehrer, from the people that I listen to. But the thing that really is astounding to me is sometimes, see, I have been very fortunate to have lived in New York City most of my life. And so when people say things about New York City, when they, you know, start using that for arguments politically and stuff like that, and I know that it's not true, that is really what starts to get me to think, you know? When they start talking about like how Micro Four Thirds, like the GH5, struggles in low light, then I start to realize that this shit is fucked up. Because I use the GH5, I've used it in low light, it's fine. Like, I don't understand, what do you mean struggles in low light? Like, it's not as clean as the A7S3 in low light, because the A7S3 lets you go to 12,800 ISO as a dual native ISO. Like, okay, but have you ever needed that in a real project? Like when you're making a, like, okay, I've shot two feature films right now. I'm working on a third right now. And I could absolutely, the film, okay, I keep interrupting myself. I do that a lot. That's kind of weird. That's because my brain, I have like a Robin Williams brain sometimes. I'm shooting a feature film right now, and I am going to use an S5 and two GH5s, all anamorphic lenses. Am I worried that I'm going to struggle with the GH5s in any way, shape, or form? No, because I've used the GH5 a lot. I love the way it looks. I mean, there are things about it that I love more than the S5. I mean, there are things that the GH5 has that the S5 doesn't have. It's got unlimited 4K recording. It's got true open gate. It's got a full-size HDMI if you're using a monitor. It's got more codecs than the S5. I mean, in many ways, other than the fact that it's Micro Four Thirds, I think anybody would agree, it's probably a better camera than the S5, because they both have shitty autofocus, right? To most people. To me, it's fine. And I never use it, so it really doesn't matter to me. But, you know, the GH5 is just as good as the S5. So two GH5s, one S5, you know, they all shoot Vlog. It's the same log format. It's going to match perfectly and beautifully. It's really about me. You know, how's my story and how's my shooting? You know, how's my composition? How's my exposure? How's my focus? Like, all of that, you know? How's my acting? You know, how is the story being told? That's all that matters. But it's only because I was able to use a Micro Four Thirds camera that I was able to come to this realization. You know, originally I was going to buy two more S5s because I need 3 camera bodies for what I want to do with this film. I need, you know, 3 angles for these shots that are going to be roughly 60% of the film. This interaction that I'm having with another actor. Like, for my first 2 films, I was the only actor in the film. But for this next film, the one that I'm working on now, I have 2 other people in the film with me. And so I'm excited about that because I get to explore different ways, because I have absolutely mastered shooting myself. I know how to do that. I know how to make it look like I have multiple cameras. I know how to keep the story moving forward, probably because I come from a solo theater background. I know how to do that. But, you know, these arguments are just like, I just wish we would put each other in each other's shoes. You know, I have a friend who works for, she's a social worker. She works for a health organization that helps people with their Medicaid. And she's getting 1 million phone calls every day from people who are either losing their Medicaid or about to lose their Medicaid. And, you know, so there are so many people in this country who only watch Fox News, who think that that's some made-up story, that that's some bullshit, that it's absolutely, that it's not true, that over 60% of the people in this country are going to lose their health care. So I just wish that they would, you know, pay attention to other things that they don't generally pay attention to. But I also wish that people who pay attention to what I pay attention to, because obviously I'm a left Democrat, whatever you want to call me. I'm liberal, I am progressive. You know, I wish that somebody like me would pay attention more to what people are listening to who only see Fox News, who are Republicans, who are MAGA, who only are on that side of the fence, so to speak. Because it would, when I think about it like that, it builds my empathy, and I understand, like, why would you think anything else? You know? It's kind of like the argument where somebody talks about a kid who grew up in the hood, like in the projects, with a single mother, no father, a mother who is like crackhead, on drugs, like not really present, in a really difficult school situation. Like, think about the worst stereotypical situation you could possibly think of, and the child is black. So systemic racism and all of the challenges that this kid has to overcome. And then nobody understands why this kid grows up angry, you know, or nobody understands why this kid grows up getting in trouble, because perhaps he has no other options, because perhaps every role model in his life is doing things that are illegal, that's going to, you know, put him in prison one day or make him dead. Like, you know, if you know people in situations like that, if you've grown up in a place like New York City, if you have been around a diverse community of people your whole life, you're going to tend to understand more that these are not just choices that people make. Like, nobody 7 years old says, oh, I want to be a drug dealer when I grow up. I want to be a thief when I grow up. You know, I want to murder people when I grow up. I want to be a rapist when I grow up. Like, people don't understand the sociological effect, the psychological effect that systemic racism has on people. But I understand it because they're not around it. They don't have any experience, and they're certainly not being told about it. You know, as a matter of fact, they're being told that things like affirmative action and DEI and all that are unnecessary. They're stupid. They're being told that it's actually racist towards white people. But I wish people who are on my side of the equation would pay more attention to what these people are being told and how they might feel that way. And also, you know, then you know what I'm being told and what you're being told, you know, that APS-C is better than micro four thirds, or micro four thirds is not as good as full frame. Like, if you've used both, if you've been involved with both sides, then you're going to understand and you can make the decisions for yourself. Because I'm never going to say that I'm right. I'm never going to say that I know better. I'm never going to say that you need to live your life the way I live my life, ever. But there is such a thing as injustice. There is such a thing as, you know, treating people poorly just because of where they came from or how they look or what gender they are, or like there is such thing as misogyny, racism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, homophobia. There are such things. There is such thing as injustice, as equality. And, you know, because I believe in the goodness of humanity and the good in people, I really believe that if we all got more experience in a more well-rounded, well-balanced way, that we'd be living in a much better world, that we wouldn't be faced with war. Like, I think if you know somebody from Gaza, if you've ever met a Palestinian person who has perhaps moved to the United States to go to school here, if you've, like recently I watched a video about Tehran. Sorry, brain fart for a second. And I watched this video and it was like looking at a video of like Fulton Street in Brooklyn, like downtown Brooklyn. Modern trains, people dressed just like me, going to work, kids going to school. Like, it was just normal. It looked like Brooklyn. It looked like LA. It looked like Chicago. And, you know, how do you envision Tehran in Iran when you think about that in your head? And you have no experience. You have no idea. You know, there's like 10 million people who live there. Do you think they're all walking around in robes with things over their head, like in the desert with bare feet? And like, that's what you think. But that's not what it's like at all. You know? How do you feel about a professional using micro four thirds? You can't even believe it. You know, somebody who's been a pro forever, you know, shooting for Sports Illustrated or, you know, Time Magazine or the NBA or the NFL, like they're using micro four thirds? Of course they are. They get better reach and they're professional. They know that their image quality is not suffering at all, but they might be using full frame too if they feel like it. But then I guarantee you they're using a much bigger lens. They're carrying around a lot more. APS-C, same thing. You know, it's probably a better situation because there's more reach. But the thing is, your perception, if you're just a YouTuber who really doesn't know, is that full frame is the best. APS-C, okay, if you can't afford full frame, get an APS-C camera, and if all else fails, get yourself a Micro Four Thirds and start there. And imagine how people who've been shooting with like Blackmagic Micro Four Thirds or, you know, a GH7 doing professional work, how they look at you when you say something like that or think that. They know that that's like ridiculous. That's so uninformed. And so, yeah, dear diary, these are the things that are running through my head today. Like, I wish we would all kind of learn more about what we're all paying attention to, like get out of our own comfort zone, like pay attention. I mean, you know, like over the last couple of days, I've watched Fox News a little bit, and I understand a lot more about why some people who I consider intelligent feel the way they do about certain things that I know for a fact are not true, because it's talking about my life, you know? And I also understand the complexity of how certain, you know, news outlets, you know, whether they be independent news outlets like Brian Tyler Cohen or, you know, stuff like that, or more traditional like ABC, CBS, CNN, like I can understand the complexity of how these more established places are, you know, having these completely different perspectives, which might be fucking your head up. I understand that. And so that's why at the end of the day, I feel like we all need to kind of pay attention to everything. And why? Because everything is available to you. Like, we really have no excuse to not pay attention to as much as possible. Because if you do that, you're going to learn a lot more, and you're going to have a lot more empathy. And then you'll be able to have a more informed, intelligent conversation with somebody about things that you might disagree with, because then you're talking about something that you actually know, because you saw it, you heard it for yourself. Sorry, a bug crawled into my ear. So that's my diary entry for today. Like, let's give and take a little bit. Let's pay attention to one another. Not to say that you shouldn't stand strongly on what you believe in, but I think if you pay attention to the other side, you'll even have a stronger argument if that's what you feel you want to do. You'll have a more, you know, substantial argument to have with somebody based on what you actually know, what you've actually learned, as opposed to what you think you know. Just your, you know, your little clips and what your outlets are telling you about something else. Like, go to that something else and learn about that. That's what we all need to do. And most importantly, we can't shut the door on anybody. We just can't do it. Because if we do, that's going to be it. You know, we're going to be over. We got to keep the door open. We have to keep our ears open. We have to keep our hearts open. So APS-C, Micro Four Thirds, full frame. Like, listen, learn how to expose, learn how to compose, learn how to tell a story, learn how to write a fucking script. Fuck AI and ChatGPT and all of that. Learn how to do it, because then you could put then you can choose by price and availability, and, you know, like, then you'll choose the best tool for the job with a more informed decision, an actual real choice. You're not going to have to listen to somebody who's a fan of whatever they're talking about on YouTube. Like, try all of them. And, you know, if you can afford to buy a camera, you can afford to rent a camera for a couple of days and see what it feels like and how it shoots. And, you know, if you really know what you're doing, then you'll know what's up and you make a better decision. So it's my diary for today. And, yeah, that's all I got to say about all of that.